Hello there. Good to have you join us for the Reporters Roundtable, where we discuss the issues from all angles and from all sides. Today we are looking at saving millions for Ghana's development, and we are here today to proffer some solutions to the sophisticated and entrenched difficulties we face as a country due to the deep-rooted corruption. Whilst at 8, we will discuss the media's coverage of matters of corruption, the increasing issues militating against attempts by the Fourth Estate of the realm in doing good investigative reporting, exposing corruption, and how new media can be employed in the fight and the way forward. My name is Rebekah Awuah, and as always, I bring your thoughts alive, and I have been joined by Cliff Ekofo. Cliff is the chief reporter with the New Times Corporation, publishers of the Ghanaian Times and the Spectator. That is the most authoritative newspaper. And with him to do this is George Ramsey Penemba, the man that cannot be hated. He is also the chief editor with the Ghana News Agency. Their mantra is speed, accuracy, and credibility. And you can also join us via WhatsApp and online. On WhatsApp, you can join us on 0557 446 429, 0557 446 429, and online at the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation Facebook page. Sending your suggestions, your comments, like the page, and share it. That we are here discussing 7 millions for Ghana's development. Cliff, we're looking at corruption and how we can save a lot for our country at this time. Let's look at what you make of Ghana's coverage or the media's coverage as far as corruption is concerned. Have we done well? Can we be applauded as media people?
Very difficult question to ask, because the answer is not going to be yes or no, so it makes it a very difficult one. Yes, of course, under the Fourth Republican era, we can say that to some extent the media has done well in helping deal with corruption. But then somehow the question that arises after the so-called exposing what we deem to be corruption, what has been the end game? What has actually been achieved or attained out of the so-called expose? So it becomes an issue, of course. If you ask whether the media has done well, to some extent, yes. But then at the end of the day, if indeed the media is actually doing what it has to do, why do we keep having issues of corruption on the top of the table? Because corruption has become more, for me, an everyday occurrence. The discussions, not corruption, is about the discussion. And so I keep wondering what exactly it is with corruption. Is it that our understanding of what constitutes corruption is flawed, or we are just helpless in terms of dealing with the issues of corruption? And I'm sure as the conversation evolves, we'll be able to delve in, because we should be able to clearly understand what our understanding of what corruption is, and then be able
Don't we have a fair idea as to what corruption in itself means or entails, and how we have been able to cover it over the time?
Fair idea, yes, but then in actual fact, there is no proper yardstick for measurement of our performance, because we need to have come from one place to another. If you want to look at maybe our performance before 1992, and then maybe from 1992 up to now, you could use that maybe measurement to say that maybe media have done well so far. But don't forget that in the past, before the 1992 Constitution came to being, there were a lot of crusade journalists in the system. They did a lot of crusade work. And those days, some people may say, well, they were quite political. But what is political? What is political is what people outside there are interested in. And I think that if you remember the days of free press, maybe the inception of independent newspaper, the inception of Chronicle and all other papers, including the Catholic Standard. There were a lot of things, corrupt issues that were written, reported in those papers. You remember Paul Ansah? He used to do a lot of in-depth analysis on corruption in the system. So for me, it has always been the same. But the question is we as media, do we have the prosecutorial powers to take up the issues after the investigations? Ours is to investigate as to whether those issues investigated and talked about will be taken up there or not. We don't have those powers. So to the extent of maybe saying that we have come out with a lot of stories indicting public officials, not only politicians, but even in other organizations, in the civil and public service, we have come out with a lot of stories. The issue we keep on, the question we keep asking, what has become of those investigations? If you want to look at the work, the quantum of the work that the media has done over the years, yes, we will say that, well, they have done so well. But in terms of prosecuting such officers, we just have only few to talk about. So, well, we have done our part of the bargain by coming out with a lot of stories. That is not to say we don't have challenges. We have a lot of challenges in terms of the way we go about our stories. We will come there, and I know one will get there.
Even though we have shed light on corruption matters and issues, would you say that it has yielded the needed results, or what do you think is amiss in this whole long fight against corruption?
Thank you very much. That is why I said probably what is our understanding of what corruption actually is? Because it's easy to have a certain set of facts as a journalist and flag it as corruption. But for it to be established as a corrupt act or not can only be determined in the law courts. And until a favorable response or favorable outcome emerges out of the law courts, it becomes very difficult to pinpoint whether indeed the set of facts as we gathered actually constituted what we refer to as corruption or not. For me, I think we must be very clear in our minds. The media, like you said, can only shine light on it. And that's why I have a huge problem when the media draw conclusions. When the media draw conclusions. Because you may look at the facts and assume that this is conflict of interest. But there are agencies that are clothed with the powers to make definite pronouncements on whether what you view as conflict of interest is indeed conflict of interest or not. So you have the SHRAJ. And even with the SHRAJ, as an organization or as a body, after making that determination, the law allows or creates avenue for whoever is involved to seek further, and until it gets to the apex, the final point where the court determines that, yes, indeed, this is a conflict of interest situation, then it's a conflict of interest situation. So the media might have reported or investigated a particular issue, and in the mind of the journalist, this may look like corruption. But then because we are not cloaked with the powers to determine whether conclusively these issues that we have put out there constitutes corruption or not, I always have a problem with when the media openly declares, because shine the light means put the facts as they are over there. I think where we are lacking is where we fail to, after shining the light, we fail to bring pressure to bear on those who must act for us to get a definite pronouncement on what it is that we have shined the light on. So we investigate an issue that borders on criminality. As a journalist, you are not clothed with the power to pronounce criminality. So what is the collaboration between...
Judgmental.
You understand? What is the collaboration between you as a journalist and the CID? That is clothed with the power to investigate and to assemble all the elements of criminality and then move ahead to proceed to the appropriate forum to determine the criminality or otherwise of that particular issue. I'll give you a typical example. Not long ago, we have the Office of the Special Prosecutor coming out with a report. And even though I'm not a lawyer, I had issues with even the way the language was couched, where the report clearly makes definite judgmental pronouncements. And interestingly, the immediate past Office of the Special Prosecutor writes a whole episode trying to rubbish or punch holes in there. And I said the Office of the Special Prosecutor could have saved itself if, after making its findings, had proceeded to the law court. Because once the law court makes the pronouncement, that is the judgment. The courts are clothed with the authority, the power to make judgmental statements, because that is why a judge sits in there. And even with that one, if you watch the hierarchy of the courts, if one court pronounces and you are not happy, you go to a superior until where we have all agreed that once a case is determined at the apex, the Supreme Court, that case becomes a final, and whether you are satisfied or not is immaterial, because that is what we have all agreed as the rule governing us. So yes, indeed, the media is replete with a lot of corruption. I call them allegations, corruption allegations. But what is our effort in dealing with those who are cloaked with the power to secure final determination or pronouncement on what we put out there as corruption? And that is why I ask whether indeed our understanding of corruption, whether our understanding of corruption is right or wrong. Because what you may perceive to be a corrupt act may end up in the law court, and then after all the facts, a court may decide that what you were calling corruption had nothing to do with corruption. So in that case, whose should be taken? Is it the court or you, the journalist? And that is why, for me, I find it worrying when the media makes judgmental statement on some set of facts that comes to them. That, of course, the ingredient there may look like corruption. Then you go ahead to make a definite pronouncement that this is a corrupt practice.
But is that to say that in reality or in real cases, those corrupt practices or acts do not exist? Because I'm trying to get it.
That is not what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that we must know that the state works with a structure.
There are organs of
state, of which the media.
And we need to collaborate effectively.
You understand?
Okay.
So yes.
Play your role. Leave
Even if the facts are such
pointing
that
to such.
compelling. Because you are not clothed with authority to make a judgment on it, it becomes difficult. Because sometimes you make a definite judgment, it goes to court, and a small technicality is raised, and then the whole issue of corruption, the pack, it's collapsed like a pack of cards. You understand? I believe that, yes, we are doing well. You hear a lot of corruption allegations, but it shouldn't stop there. We should find ways of collaborating with the agencies such that if my news outlet breaks a story on certain facts that mimic corruption, the agency tasked with the authority to investigate, to assemble the facts that will actually bring out the criminality within that set of facts, and then move ahead to an appropriate forum to press charges and then secure a favorable ruling to affirm that indeed the work I did as a journalist has confirmed as corruption. That is where I think our focus must be on. That does not mean we should stop reporting on issues that we deem to be corrupt. My only concern is that when you make definite pronouncements, then you create a problem.
That's right. But Ram, you know, Cliff talked about something, and it drew my attention. You spoke about conflict of interest.
For example,
you used that as an example. And in majority of the corruption cases or reports that have been put out, the facts, the background checks and all of those, you find some elements of conflict of interest. Number two, our kind of work also borders on a public interest. At the end of the day, it is the public we are doing the work for. So let's critically examine this whole thing about the complexity of balancing the public interest as against our individual or our own interest, or what I will call, individual rights in using the media to fight in corruption. How does it work?
First and foremost, as journalists, our core mandate is to put out the facts and figures and let the public make their own judgment. That is the reason why in your media house, his media house and my media house, when you go to report on a particular issue, you do add opinions, because your opinion doesn't come in there. It is somebody who is saying something at a program. He has called you to come and tell you what he has, maybe press conference, maybe presentation of reports and other things. What you need to do there as a journalist is to come and present the facts and figures as they are given to you.
If you want an opinionated platform, it is the Reporters Roundtable.
Fine. Apart from that, you can write features.
That's right.
Writing of features, you can put your own opinion in it. But when somebody calls you for a program, you go in for a program and you come and say, I think that it should have been, no. Then you are becoming judgmental as we met. So we said at the beginning, I think that we, as part of our code of ethics, we should stick to our work as journalists, remaining neutral, presenting the facts and figures as they are supposed to be, leave the judgment to the reader, the listener, and the viewer. Because you cannot be, the player of the drama and a dancer as well. It's not possible. So for us to say that, to sit on networks and pronounce judgment, sometimes when you listen to even some interviews, it's like you are in a courtroom. The kind of questions that they make reference to issues, past issues, fine. You can always buttress your point with history and maybe cases, but to make a pronouncement, or don't you think you are wrong? Do you think? I mean, when you go there, it means that you have already reached in that courtroom with mindset of, your mind full of some particular questions that you want to ask before you leave the place. And I think that when we go with a lot of preemptive questions, it becomes, I mean, you threw the truth overboard. And I think that as journalists, I said it here and before, not on this program, on this particular topic, as journalists, we should not be swayed by what people say outside there. It is for us to rather educate the people outside there. Somebody who is a journalist and is going to a program like this, coming for a program like this, you see somebody here talking of what social media is saying, what people are saying outside there. I'm not saying that whatever you find on social media is completely not true. But in most cases, some of those things are skewed towards a particular angle. Somebody is interested in something, then he puts it out there and paints the picture as if though the other side does not exist. So it is for us as journalists to look at the other side of it. If I hear something from Cliff about you, as a good journalist, I should be able to find out from you the other side of the story. Getting the other side of the story is always very important. We shouldn't just put the meat on the platform and start cutting. Oh, this is meat from a friend. You don't even know the source of that meat. You should find a way of getting the source before you can even participate in the cutting. That is what I'm talking about. We have that responsibility to educate the people out there. We shouldn't just churn out what, because others are saying it, we should also say it. We should not be judgmental, as he said from the beginning. We should move away from there, and I think that will make a media has come out with a lot of stories over the years. But my question I keep asking, what has become of them?
That is what I asked from the beginning.
Yes,
has it yielded the needed results that we
collaboration is very important.
Okay.
When we go out with some of those stories, we should be able to collaborate with the agencies that matter. This is what we have gotten to. Read this story. We've gotten this story. We are bringing it out there. You are in charge of this and that. What can we do? If we are able to collaborate, by the time the story would have even hit the ground running, the agencies will start preparing their nose on what to do next. But if you just hit the headlines and leave it there, it's like going to use a basket in fetching water.
So what you are proposing is like a backup for what we do, something of the sort. Is that what I am getting from what you're saying?
Yes, beyond providing information, educating and entertaining, the media itself is a pressure group. So for example, I sit here and I'm wondering, Manasseh Azuri did a very beautiful investigative work, short of making any judgment, contract for sale. Whatever facts in those documentaries handed over to the right agencies to take appropriate action on that. How many years down the line? And it looks as if we are cool, the journalist is cool, okay. It could as well be that by the time the case travels through its logical conclusion, that at the law court, the court may end up saying that the absence of A, B, C, D, yes, you got all the facts right, but the absence of A, B, C, D makes your case a non-issue. Or the presence of A, B, C, D makes the issue very critical and of national importance. Because we shouldn't forget that anytime a journalist picks a pen, the public interest, as you say, is in there, but you have individuals' integrity also at stake. And so there must be a balancing, and that is why in training, you triangulate, assemble the facts, and put it out there for the public to make their own judgment. That is the court of public opinion. But then the court of law deals with a set of facts to come to a conclusion. So you realize that we have done so many exposés. In some cases, the media have made definite pronouncement on it, and yet where we the power to call somebody a criminal or otherwise is the issues never get there. Because the fact that the media reports that Becky is corrupt does not guarantee me the right to refer to Becky as a corrupt person. But if a law court determines and affirms that Becky is a corrupt person, wherever I sit, I can conveniently and boldly refer to Becky as a corrupt person who must not be entertained within the public sphere. And Becky cannot do anything because it is a court of law, court of competent jurisdiction that has made that pronouncement. But if a newspaper flashes on the front page, Becky is corrupt, and I decide to run with it, and Becky decides to take me on, it's likely Becky may have a favorable judgment in the law court because the media are not cloaked with the powers to make those pronouncements. You assemble the facts. So I used Manasseh's
investigative piece
about the contract for sale. He goes to the Registrar General to unravel or unveil the personalities or the persons of the companies involved. He speaks with this, he speaks with it, and then present those facts. Now it is up to me as the public to make my own judgment out of it. But then it is not enough. The issue must travel just beyond the media airing that particular documentary. Agencies cloaked with the power must pick those facts, move beyond them, and see how they can secure a favorable conviction or otherwise in the law court. Once the law court determines, then the work of the journalist has come to finality.
Whose duty is it to bring this to the knowledge of the powers that be?
Ordinarily,
if things were working, for instance, on my network, and
if things were working seamlessly, if things were working seamlessly, ordinarily, once the media puts out there, another agency of state must be interested in the issue to pick it up. So, for example, the CID on their own could simply pick up this Manasseh thing and then begin to also assemble its own facts within, and then make a determination whether this set of facts, once I proceed to the courts, I'll be able to get a favorable judgment in the interest of the state or not, and then you do that. But things are not working seamlessly. So what I'm saying is that it is not enough for the media to break the stories. If you are convinced that your set of facts are compelling enough, then you don't just end at publication. Once you have published, you move on to the agencies. And that's why I said the media can also act as a pressure group. If the media begins to mount pressure on the agencies that should act and are not acting, they will begin to act. So I do this story with this set of facts as an investigative body of state. You also go through it and you feel the evidence in there is not compelling enough for me to proceed to the law court. We should be told, maybe based on our own assessment, A, B, C, D. You looked at the thing from here, but in our own assessment, we don't think such an issue will give us a favorable conviction in the law court. I bring you, if you're a student of history in this country, you remember when the NDC took over in 2009, Madam Betty Modirisu was then the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice. There was a lot of pressure for the then government to go ahead and prosecute the former government appointees, because a series of corruption allegations have been made in the media. At a point in time, pressure was brought such that Madam Betty Modrisu had to be taken out of that particular ministry to another ministry. Then they brought in Martin Amido. And I remember that was when the issue of the first time I heard the word hired gutter press, hired press, rented press. That was the first time, because some media houses were mounting pressure on Martin Amidu to the extent that people started even attacking his personality and integrity. And so he had to come out to talk about the rented press. And he said that he wasn't going to go to court with any flimsy accusation just because a media house reports it. Does not mean she must run to court with it. And I remember vividly. So I asked myself, this is what the Attorney General and Minister of Justice at that time said, to the extent that he even referred to a section of the media as rented press. That is beside the case. The rare fact of the issue does it mean that sometimes what we see and view as corruption per the legal eye may not meet what constitutes corruption in the law court. And every lawyer will tell you, if the elements in there, no matter how pleasing it is to the public, does not or are not strong enough to secure a favorable conviction, no lawyer will put his integrity on the line. They will brush it aside and allow the noise to continue in the public space. And that is why I started with my preamble. I stated that, do we actually appreciate what we even refer to as corruption? Because if you say it is corruption and it goes to court and the court does not affirm it, then it means there is no corruption.
Right. So with what you have said, does it call for a course of action from our end as media men or media? Yes, those in the media.
Yes, it does. It does. So if you are sure and you believe in your set of facts, then beyond putting it in the public domain, how do you establish a working collaboration with the agencies that are mandated by law to affirm the information you have put out there? Because until that affirmation comes in, everything you have done will remain in the court of public opinion. It has no impact in the fight against corruption.
Let's come to our challenges. Yeah. Obviously, as you said, we are doing our best, but our best perhaps is not enough. But we cannot say that we do not go through certain challenges while bringing out the story and all of those. As people who come face to face with alleged corrupt practices, what are some of the challenges we are confronted with?
Very interesting. Let me state first here that investigations or investigative journalism, for that matter, goes with a lot of responsibilities.
And expensive too.
And it's very expensive. Before you investigate one story, sometimes it might take you the whole year or more to get a very good story. And that might mean that you need a lot of resources to go on. It is only media houses that are interested in that investigative journalism that will go for sponsorship, because with a sponsorship, some media houses cannot even pay the transport of the investigator. And so to achieve that, we need to get a lot of sponsorship from outside. And that is why, if you are not also very careful, you compromise your stand. Because if, for example, you go into, let's say, an organization that supports you to investigate certain stories, and one day they themselves are found wanting in this, they are found in the same shoe that others were found and they sponsored, what do? These are limitations that we are likely to face as journalists. Because media houses sponsoring their own journalists to go out there, only a few can do that. You know that. The getting out money, pushing out money out there for investigations is totally non-available in some media houses. And it will be difficult to carry out such a thing. And in so doing, people who are not strong-hearted, they fall into the traps of others. And what do I mean? They fall into traps. Somebody might give you something bigger. That's why the highest bidder at this point. Somebody might have contracted you to investigate a story. Then another person who is being investigated is ready to give the journalist more than maybe twice, thrice what the other person has given. So in this place, when it gets to that point, the journalist will have to use discretion and must be disciplined in whatever he is doing. Because if you are not focused, you are likely to go in for the highest bidder. And going in for the highest bidder, it means that you have lost your focus. And so for me, one of the limitations that we have as journalists is funding, which brings about, if you are not well-resourced, you become very vulnerable to the people you are investigating. And if you are not careful, you fall in a pit of no return. We also know of journalists who are used by, who are funded by people to hand down their opponents. And so if you are not careful, even your life is at stake. If you I allow you to use Cliff against me, just because you want to run me down, you may not be hurt in that event because you are safe, you are funding him. But Cliff, at the end of the day, may even lose his life. And that is very dangerous. It's one of danger, the danger of, in going in there is one. And I think that if we have to achieve this with the few challenges that we have, then we have to remain resolute, and we have to also source a lot of funding that will not allow you to be swayed by one party or the other in the search for the truth for the people out there.
But you know that we are all well aware that mainstream journalism does not pay as it is, and sometimes there are compromises on professionalism. Yeah. With investigative journalists, to what extent can they be insulated from corruption so that they, or any attempts to buy them or in one form or another? Sure.
Networking and coalitions are very important in doing investigative journalism. You cannot do investigative journalism just in your own corner alone. They do it in collaboration with other people, within and outside. You must form partnership with some other people beyond the confines of your walls. And that is why a lot of investigative journalists are not so much interested in internal issues alone, because they have networks. If, for example, you are part of a network that is supposed to investigate something in Kenya or maybe Cote d'Ivoire, once you are a member, you can be taken from your country to another country to go and investigate. And in those places, international cases like that, you are not paid with meager allowances or remunerations. You take big money, and whatever, if you are able to investigate 1 or 2 cases in a year, it can take care of you and your family throughout the year.
But that big money comes with integrity and working with some kind of and professionalism in mind for a very long time, don't you think?
Yes. For me, the greatest asset for a journalist is your personal integrity. But then the question you would have to ask yourself is, beyond the integrity, what is the interest? Because I have seen people who say they are investigative journalists who are investigating issues of corruption. And in a country where corruption has become a political tool, then issue consistency. So you investigate corruption yesterday, and then all of a sudden today you go mute, and then tomorrow you resurface to come and tell me that you are an investigative journalist. Straight away, I question your integrity. And I don't take your work seriously. Because the question that comes out then is, what is your interest? What is your interest? Because if your interest is the nation, and you want to save the nation millions of cedis, then it doesn't matter whether it is A or B, because the nation remains colorless. But the other actors in there may have different colors, maybe blue or it may be red. So if red is in, and then all of a sudden your energy, your passion to investigate corruption is aroused, and then blue comes in and then goes dormant, and then there is an issue of interest in them. Secondly, we will have to look at this whole issue about corruption in totality. Even those of us who say we are leading the charge in the fight against corruption, if we look through ourselves in all sincerity, can we stand the test of time? If we were put to the same measure, would we pass the test? So it's a very complex issue.
But is that to say, say that even though we cannot pass the test, we can't also investigate others?
You see,
who
so then that is where the issue of the issue of interest comes in. So then what is your interest? You understand? Because if the interest is the nation, as we put it, then irrespective of the circumstance, irrespective of the condition,
you have to be consistent.
Consistency.
Right. Let me take this one. He said, the person says, good show by all standards. Some of the journalists accuse people of corruption for their personal interest or for their political paymasters to achieve their political agenda. My name is Alhaji Opas from Achimtafo. He adds that the right thing for a journalist to do is to report his corrupt findings to the appropriate institutions to deal with them. Alhaji from Achimtafo, we are grateful for that. Hello, and thank you for this particular subject. You got it spot on, and you have a good panel too. First, if the nation or the national population census can provide net stocks of 40% of the total GDP as human resource of the country, then we can save some millions and money for the development of Ghanaians. I am Rashid from Achimota. Rashid, you are an ardent viewer. Thank you so much. Almost every time you send in your message, we are grateful for that. You can also send in your WhatsApp message or your text message on 0557-446-429. It is displayed boldly on your screens, and you can send in your message right about now. If you haven't sent it to and you are moving around, then of course you can grab your tablet or your phone, because we are online at Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. Get to our Facebook page, and we are streaming live now. You can send in your suggestions and your comments right there. You like the page and also share it. Let's look at a very another issue about compromise. I think you touched on it briefly. In our quest to fighting corruption, sometimes you, the journalist, in order to keep your integrity, you are able to go through and consistency high. But what if the tables turn and the story is aired, but the leadership of your media house is compromised to an extent, and they are like, no, you can't, this story can't air again, let's drop the story, let's kill the story. What happens to that zeal to sustain our fight?
Yeah, every media house has its policies and principles regarding publications and airing or what do you call it, printing, whatever. And I think that before you come out with a plan to investigate a particular story, then that might have been thought through
and discussed
at the highest level, maybe from management to editorial, and maybe before it gets to the reporter on a beat. And any media worth is sought, media house worth is sought, will not renege on whatever principle they have come out with to investigate a story. If they do so, then they have failed the entire public interested in that issue. And if you do that, you might also lose your credibility. Credibility is very, very important in every media house. If you are not credible, then nobody will listen or watch you or read from you. And to maintain you talked of consistency, so you must maintain that your credibility. You must make sure that whatever you put out there is the truth and nothing but the truth. And if you renege on that principle, then you might have been disappointing your listeners, your viewers, and your readers. And for me, reverse gear in the middle of a river is quite dangerous, because you might sink with the boat, sink with the car that you are going with. Once you start it, you must continue. Even Jesus Christ in the Bible says, he who sets the hands on the wheel and looks back is not fit to be in the kingdom of God. And I think that as journalists, that should be one of our guiding principles. You take up an issue to investigate, continue with it. Come what may. If you do that to me at the middle of the journey or my investigation, I might resign honorably and leave the media house.
Well, that is you. But in this day and age of media ownership, with politicians and people of who call the shots, who are owning media houses, and if you are to come up with something that perhaps it will affect his business, it will affect his party, it will affect some person closer to them, how do you deal with it as the person fronting, even though the story was given to you by the leadership and was agreed? How do you maneuver?
So simple. The rules are very clear. If what you are going to investigate borders on criminality, then the first thing you must bear in mind is that the bars does not stop with publication.
Okay.
That is one. So we agree that I have investigated, but of course I know the policy of my media house, and I know that this story may not necessarily sit well with my media house, but the set of facts still remain concrete and provable set of facts.
No doubt.
And I believe there's criminality in there. I may decide that I will look for a colleague in another media house whose house policy allows for this kind of a story to go. But it will not end there, because there are elements of criminality. Like I said, even when you publish, if things were working seamlessly, other agencies must be interested and invite not just you, the reporter, but the various actors within your triangulation of the story and begin to assess or gather their own set of facts for prosecution. So one, you move ahead and report your set of facts to the appropriate agency. But because we operate in an environment where things do not work seamlessly, you can always trust it that we don't have a homogeneous media group in this country. And the politicians do it beautifully. Let me show you. When he is in his party and he's having problems with his party people, when he's going to court, he doesn't pick a lawyer who aligns with his political persuasion. He goes to the opposite side. So the examples abound. You will see a supposed lawyer who has leanings or a soft spot for party A defending an issue concerning somebody from party B, and then you ask yourself, but this lawyer, this issue concerns party A. What is his interest in there?
Someone may say corruption has no color. It borders on the nation.
So yes, yeah. If your media house, the policy is saying that it can't carry on with that story. Two legs, because it involves criminality. Begin to deal with those who are taxed by law to do with issues of criminality. And then you can also link it up to a colleague journalist whose media house policy allows him or her to go ahead with that particular story.
Right.
So you may not have done the story, but you have not killed
the story, but somebody else can take it up and do it. Right. So unfortunately my time is up, but let me take this one from Dr. Simeon from Tema. Dog says, things to be considered to pursue corruption: one, passion. Government and appropriate structures must be there to follow as a journalist to cushion you against unnecessary victimization. There has to be funds, network of competent colleagues, strong legal colleagues, both physically and spiritually cushioned. And that is coming from Dr. Simeon from Tema, an ardent viewer as well. Thank you so much, Ghana, for joining in the conversation. I can see your messages keep coming. I'm sorry, but my time is up. We would have to go. Some other time we'll continue with this discussion. And let me say that finally, journalism has lost its focus to most journalists as far as integrity is concerned, as most see it as money-making venture instead of living up to the tax as the institutions demand and living for the public. We will go back to our first love and do what we have been called to do. Thank you so much, Ghana. My name is Rebekah Awuah, and I've been in here with Clive Ekofo and George Ramsey Benemba, with Apia Kubi on the console and the entire team behind, ensuring that you get this broadcast live. We are out. God willing, we'll see you again same time next week. If you say a prayer, just say one for us too.
Harbor. The ships could not enter the shallow waters, so the canoes would offload and bring the cargo to shore. This is the headquarters of the Ghana Post near High Street.
When we talk of a post office or a full-fledged post office, we are essentially talking about an office that has been accepted by the postal administration. For that matter, I'm talking about Ghana Post. We run the service at the post office level. We have a postmaster, and depending on the volume of transactions in that particular post office, we determine the number of people that will be